All right, so you know how we're always geeking out about AI and its potential to, well, kind of shake things up.
Yeah, big time.
Well, this deep dive is like looking into AI's potential on a whole other level. We're talking about the idea of AI not just boosting, but actually doubling the entire African economy by 2035.
It's a bold claim, no doubt.
Absolutely. You shared this LinkedIn article by Willy Seyama. He's the CEO of the marketing agency Initiate, and he doesn't hold back. Plus, you threw in some hard economic data to really put this goal into perspective.
Right, because the African Union, they're not messing around. They're aiming for a $6 trillion economy in just over a decade. And AI, well, they're putting a lot of faith in its potential to make it happen.
6 trillion, that's more than double what it is now.
Yeah, and Africa is incredibly diverse, right? 54 countries, each with its own unique challenges, its own political scene, its own economic situation.
Right, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly. And Seyama, to his credit, he digs into the specifics. He focuses on the top 5 economies in Africa: South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, and Ethiopia.
And those 5, they're carrying a lot of weight, right?
Oh, absolutely. They make up over half of Africa's GDP.
So in 2024, South Africa's in the lead with a GDP of $373 billion.
Okay.
Egypt's trailing close behind at $347 billion. Then you've got Algeria at $266 billion, Nigeria at $252 billion, and finally Ethiopia at $205 billion.
So a pretty clear frontrunner there with South Africa.
For sure. So to reach a $6 trillion economy by 2035, what kind of growth are we talking about?
Well, according to Seyama, they need to hit a consistent 7% growth every single year for over a decade.
7% every year. That's ambitious.
Yeah, and that's where those graphs you shared come in. You know, the ones showing the historical GDP growth for these countries over the past 20 years. Let's just say the reality is a bit more complicated.
Right, it's not exactly a straight line upwards.
Not even close. It's more like, you know, trying to predict the stock market. Lots of ups and downs. There have been some good years, sure. But that consistent 7% growth has been more elusive. In fact, growth has even dipped a bit in recent decades.
So not exactly the most encouraging track record. And to add another layer here, you also pull those projections for these economies up to 2029. What's the outlook there?
Well, unfortunately, they're not predicting some miraculous turnaround. There's some growth expected, but that magic 7% benchmark, not even close for any of them.
Not even Ethiopia. I thought they were projected to be the fastest growing out of the 5.
They are, but even their projected growth falls short of that 7% target.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is a gap, a pretty significant gap between where these economies are predicted to go and where they need to be if this whole AI revolution is going to have the impact Seyama is talking about.
Exactly. And that's the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Can AI really bridge that gap? Can it be the catalyst for that kind of economic transformation?
It's a massive question. And maybe to get a sense of what rapid growth can look like in the tech world, we should look at OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. Seyama includes some of their stats, and they're honestly mind-boggling.
Oh, absolutely. Their growth has been, well, almost unbelievable. In just 3 months, their user base practically doubled.
Wow, that's the definition of explosive growth.
For sure. And their valuation, it's skyrocketed. We're talking almost doubling in less than a year. That kind of growth, it turns heads, it disrupts industries, projected to potentially jump from billions to $1 trillion valuation in just a few years.
Okay, so we have OpenAI growing at warp speed. And then we have the African Union aiming for this massive economic transformation.
And that contrast really highlights the scale of what Africa is aiming for, right? This isn't just about, you know, adding a few AI tools here and there. It's about reshaping the economic landscape of an entire continent.
So we've talked about the ambition, the economic realities, and we've seen just how quickly things can change in the tech world with that OpenAI example. But let's get into the specifics. If AI is really going to be the engine driving this economic transformation, where do we even begin?
Seyama's right there with you. He breaks the strategy down into 4 key areas.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Almost like pillars holding up this AI-powered future.
All right, let's hear about these pillars.
Pillar number 1, infrastructure.
Makes sense. You can't exactly run cutting-edge AI on a dial-up connection.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. Africa has a real chance here to kind of leapfrog over old technology and build a digital infrastructure that's designed for AI from the ground up.
Interesting.
Think high-speed internet everywhere, widespread cloud computing, data centers that are built for machine learning.
But let's be real. Building that kind of infrastructure takes a ton of money.
Oh.
Is that even feasible for a lot of these countries?
That's the big question. And it's not even just about the money. It takes political will, right?
Yeah.
You need governments and private companies to work together.
Collaboration is key.
Absolutely. And a long-term vision, too, not just thinking about the next election cycle.
Right, right. This is about the future.
Exactly.
Okay, so pillar number 1, laying the foundation. What's next?
Well, you've got the infrastructure, but what about the people who are actually going to be using these systems?
The builders, the innovators.
Yes. And that takes us to pillar number 2, education and skills training.
Love it.
It's not enough to just have the technology. You need a workforce that can build it, use it, manage it.
Right, those skills are essential.
We're talking software developers, data scientists, AI ethicists, even just everyday people need to know how to use AI in their work, in their lives.
It's like, imagine a generation of kids growing up with AI literacy. Like, it's just a normal part of their education.
Exactly.
They wouldn't even think twice about it. They'd just be out there building the next big thing.
And that's a huge part of what Seyama is talking about. AI can't just be this niche thing for tech people. It needs to be part of everything.
Woven into the fabric of society. Okay, I like it. So we've got the infrastructure, we've got the skills. What's next?
Now we need to get everybody on board.
Okay.
And that's pillar number 3. Widespread adoption.
Widespread. So we're not just talking about tech companies, we're talking about...
They're talking healthcare, agriculture, finance, education, you name it.
Wow.
It's about weaving AI into every part of the economy.
Not just using it as a Band-Aid here and there. This is about a fundamental shift.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really tricky because you're dealing with systems that are already in place, ways of doing things that have been around for a long time.
People can be resistant to change.
Absolutely. People might be worried about losing their jobs, or they might not understand how this technology can actually help them.
It's like trying to convince someone who's been driving a stick shift their whole life to switch to an automatic.
Perfect analogy. It might be better in the long run, but there's that learning curve.
For sure.
And that's why Seyama really emphasizes this. You have to show people the value of AI, not just tell them. Give them real examples, success stories.
Right.
If people can see how AI is making healthcare better or helping farmers grow more food or making financial services more accessible.
They're more likely to get on board.
Exactly. Show, don't tell.
I like it. All right, we're on to the final pillar now. What's the last piece of the puzzle? What's the last piece of the puzzle?
This last pillar is all about making sure this AI revolution isn't all talk. It has to deliver right. Seyama calls it effective application.
So not just having these cool AI tools, but actually putting them to work, solving real problems.
Exactly. And Africa has some big ones to tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about healthcare access, improving education, figuring out poverty and inequality, climate change, food security. We could go on and on.
These are huge issues.
Exactly.
It's not like one magic AI button is going to fix everything.
Right, right.
It's like you could have the best toolbox in the world, all the fanciest tools you can imagine. But if you don't know how to use
It's
them...
not going to build you a house.
Right, exactly.
You need the skills, the plan, the right tool for the right job.
Exactly.
And that's a big part of what Seyama is getting at here. It's about using AI in a way that makes sense for Africa.
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right. It's not about just copying what other parts of the world are doing. It's about understanding Africa's unique challenges and then developing AI solutions that actually address them.
Okay, so taking all of that into account, the big question, is this vision of an AI-powered African economy actually possible? Or are we getting a little ahead of ourselves?
Honestly, it's tough to say for sure. I mean, there are some major hurdles to overcome. You need governments, businesses, and individuals all on the same page.
It's a team effort.
Absolutely. But even if they only achieve, say, half of what they're aiming for,
the impact could be incredible.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's really exciting about this whole thing. Whether or not Africa hits that ambitious $6 trillion GDP target, just going after AI-powered growth could open up so many doors, drive progress in so many areas.
It's like even if you're aiming for the stars and you only reach the moon, you've still done something amazing.
Exactly. And that's what makes this such a fascinating conversation. We're talking about potential, about challenges, and the possibility of real change. What do you think?
That's the question we want our listeners pondering. Is this the wave of the future, or are we getting a little ahead of ourselves? That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but keep those brain gears turning because the future of AI, well, it's just getting started. Until next time.